So, hello everybody. Thank you very much, Ron, again for a great briefing around this whole workshop. And just by way of introduction, guys, I'm Jatin. My name is Jatin Oza. I run SAP Application Management Services Group for Protera globally. I have my colleague here, Mr. Stelianos. If you can please introduce yourself, Stelios.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming in and enduring us for an hour or so. We have exciting material for you to listen to. My name is Stylianos Markogiannakis. I'm a senior engineer architect with Protera for more than 5 years. And, since the beginning, we were working on migrating SAP workloads to public clouds, especially to AWS, with which we're partners. And Jatin can give you all the exciting backstory about all this. So very glad to see you here.
Thank you, Stelios. All right, with that, just want to give you a little bit of logistics. Guys, please feel free to ping us or ask questions during the course of this deck. I really wanted to make it more interactive because we have some very interesting content here, and I can easily imagine, depends on your involvement in these kind of migrations before and how you are exploring this journey and at what level you may be. There can be different levels of questions, and we are here to address any sorts of questions here, and we can obviously park all further detailed discussions around it, as we are going to offer some exciting assessment as a result of this discussion, whoever is interested to do the migrations, right? So today's discussion point is really focused more towards moving the SAP workload on AWS platform. But as a company, just wanted to introduce Protera. As you can see, our strength here, we would like to call ourselves a cloud modernization company. As we really get into our next generation, we have ample experience around all sorts of customer segments, ranging between a $500 million company to a $140 billion organizations, managing their workload or helping them in migrating their workload to cloud. A little bit further about our history. We were founded in 1998, got certified in 2008 with SAP. We were the first partner for AWS to put the SAP live application on a public platform, partnered with AWS to get it certified with AWS for SAP. We have obviously had a lot of milestones achieved over a period of time. Would not like to repeat all of them. It's here for us. A great milestone recently achieved by getting a market backup from Palmico Group and got funded with Palmico Group, and we call it Protera 2.0 now. And here we are with our certificates, as you can see, from SAP, from Microsoft, and from AWS, and some of the other numbers that speaks for itself in terms of successful migrations and our capabilities around managing SAP systems on public cloud. So before we get into a lot of technical aspect around migrating SAP workloads, some of the common drivers that really initiates this kind of conversations in organizations, as you can see, obviously, something that we have seen in last 2 years, a big panic and trigger point around consolidating or providing a protective means to our data centers. And when we say consolidation, it's not just about, let's say, managing the workloads in a more organized fashion, but also protecting your workload with more energetic and more in an optimized fashion, where you have a different kind of teams, not just your own organization, but all your partners working at a global scale by using the cloud as an initiative, right? As you can see, the digital transformation initiatives are kind of expedited by 500% in last 2 years just because of the pandemic, as everybody has realized that they will need to run their businesses and then to make sure that the businesses runs very efficiently with a global cooperation with some sort of platform that allows them to continue to run their businesses irrespective of their locations. Cost is obviously one of the biggest driver. Acquisitions runs all the time, and it allows the opportunities of IT organizations within your segments to kind of consider a lot of consolidations and adopting better frameworks that the parent organizations or the child organizations may have. All these drivers really allows you to continue to excel in the area of migrations. And when you think about migrations, obviously you will need to plan and manage the business cases. So some of the common drivers here, there can be many, could not list all of them here, but depends on your situations. You may have many other driving factors to consider for migrations. So very common questions when we start thinking about migration really comes in our mind is, okay, as part of the migration, do we really want to plan and optimize any kind of platform change, which can be operating system version upgrades. It can be a technology platform change, like for example, if you're still running on AS400 and the RICS architectures, would it allow you to consider for a next generation technology, moving towards the next technology which is commonly supported, widely adopted, and more agile, flexible to move, right? All those aspects comes in your mind, but the most common scenarios that you need to consider to kind of minimize your search or plan your migrations in terms of what kind of platform change it is, with a simple categorization that if you are actually keeping your operating system, the SAP software and database versions the same, you ultimately qualify under a simple category called homogeneous system migrations. And if you're changing any of that, it qualifies for the heterogeneous system migrations. Once you have this information in your mind, it actually allows you to explore your options, right? And then you will be more educated around what kind of standard options that SAP, AWS, all other platform providers offers. Obviously, one of the other factors is to consider the network that you should be able to establish based on the infrastructures that you have. A little bit of detail around the two categories that I just mentioned, but in a very simple layman term, if the platform, underlying platform, which includes operating system, DB, and SAP version remains same, you should consider it as an homogeneous system migration. And if it is changing at all for any of those three layers, it's qualified as heterogeneous system migrations. And we have further slides to discuss in detail about how these two are different and what are the strategies and methodologies we have. So it's a nice classification where we try to explain that the homogeneous and heterogeneous migration scenarios in a little bit of more detail around what kind of transitions and transformations you can think of by taking simple examples here. When we say any DB in SAP world, as you can imagine, it basically means anything other than HANA, because for HANA, they have two major categories, HANA and any DB. So SQL Server, DB2, Oracle, and Sybase, and any other non-HANA DBs, they could classify against that any DB scenario. As I explained before, all the simple two categories, and with different tool sets that we are going to explore in quite detail. Those are the typical options available. I'd like to have Stelios introduce those AWS service a little bit around this, and we do have slides around getting into details of how those AWS services will be consumed and what fits where in terms of the scenarios and strategies that we have explained here.
Yes, actually they're right tools for the right job, and basically the selection of the tools has to do with the size of the data that you need to move, and the cutover that you need, that you can afford. These migrations, first of all, as everybody knows, are multi-month or long-running projects, and things need to be done in waves. So you need to plan accordingly on how to move your data and minimize your downtime window, and basically even do it in a few hours or a couple of days at most. Most of the migration that we do with our customers, we do it over the weekend. So, people are closing the computers on Friday, and then on Monday they're coming in on a new platform. But in order to achieve all these, you need to use certain technologies. One is the simple one, as we call it, over the wire. So you're moving things over the network. You need to have strong lines with high bandwidth in order to be able to move a lot of data. S3 is, as you might know, is a large storage, object blob storage that AWS provides as a service, where you can just dump your backups in bulk. And this is a very well connected service that you can access over the internet or via public connectors, like if you have MPLS or any other kind of connections like this. You can also use VPNs, which means that you're using the public network. This is not the most preferred way because you have variable latency, but this is something that people consider depending on the size of the data they need to move. And also direct connect, which is a direct connection from your premise to AWS, and that is the cleanest way that you can move data from. That doesn't mean that you have to pick up one technology, one solution. Usually we employ many of them accordingly. If the data that you move are too much, then you can use other means by way of Snowball, as they call it, which is another service. They just ship a Regget box, which is basically a Regget computer with lots of storage, and use the same protocol as the S3, and they send it to your data center. You copy the data, and then you ship it back, and they upload it for you. So basically, this is done mostly for full backups that we use as the beginning of seeding the databases, the target systems.
And we'll get into all those details in the forthcoming slides, I think. So just wanted to make sure that we have weightage there. Yep, Stelios.
Yep. The other two are, a little bit more exotic, have to do with hybrid solutions. Like if you have an in-house VMware establishment and you want to extend to the cloud, you can have some workloads migrated to the cloud, and you just have it under the same pane of glass as you are familiar with. So yeah, okay, you can proceed and make more things in detail.
Absolutely. Yep. So with all these scenarios that are explained here, we're going to get into a little bit of further details, and without getting too much into technical details here, I would like to explain the scenarios as it comes around. That when it comes to as is, as we call it in our SAP world, or homogeneous system migrations, you have multiple choices to, like Stelios mentioned before, right? To choose a combination of platforms that works for you. And some of the most common business drivers to select those tools are really around best practices, the allowed business downtime, the cost, and the typical aspects around what kind of resources and access that your current providers or your on-prem data centers have for your migration providers or the migration team. Right, so the combination tools are mentioned here. I just want to make sure that you guys take it easy and then see it in a way that this is transparent to you as a customer. You can always engage companies like Protera, and we will have the best practices and automation built around all these tool sets, and we're going to do this for you. But it is very important for you to understand how this happens, what are the caveats around it, and we'll get into the details around that. Right, so just an introduction of all the tool sets that we have here, as Stelios already mentioned, S3 and Snowball and some of the other tool sets. But data sync, Storage gateways are some of the other additional AWS services that we use to achieve one of these scenarios. Right? All right. So before we get into too much detail of each scenario here, I just wanted to make sure again, if you have any specific questions on any term that you see on the slide, and if you want to get into details, please feel free to unmute yourself and talk. Otherwise, we can always have a question answer round. We have a special section for that as well. Now, with simple full backup and restore strategy, homogeneous system migrations are proven over the years. This is the most common methodology that typically all the data center management services have used over past 2 decades, right? So it is not different for any cloud migrations. Cloud also provides you the same option. Depends on the size of your database. Cloud also provides us an option to use something like S3 bucket, which is basically a very cheap storage and a shareable shared storage that anybody can access across the globe using internet, using a secured and a transparent means of simple client and server services, where we can upload our backups of the databases and servers and then restore it in a specific target environment, which can be a very common Amazon EC2 image. Right, so this is simple backup and restore scenario. Nothing changes per se, and 2 possible different means, either via wire using AWS Direct Connect or VPN or Snowball, or uploading the data to S3 bucket. As you can easily imagine, the challenge here with this strategy is it's going to take its own time, because the backup takes its own time, the transfer takes its own time, and the restore takes its own time. So if your business cannot afford to have that much time as an allowed business downtime, obviously we have to think of some more innovative and creative option here, which is basically what we are seeing in the slide today. The incremental backup and log replication allows us to minimize our downtime. This is Protera's de facto option for any kind of homogeneous system migrations. We use this approach by default, and we try to provide the business downtime in the typically, as Stelios explained, in hours, right, rather than days, and depends on the size of your environment and the allowed number of runs. We can even bring it down to less than 2 hours, right? Depends on the size and all other environments. But imagine that a very large workload running on on-prem data centers can be simply migrated over a very short business outage window with this strategy. Right now, if we get into a little bit of detail here, what we are using is a simple technology. We first start with a full backup, where even large environments like 5 terabyte, 10 terabyte databases can be transferred while your production is up and running, or whatever the environment we're choosing. Once the backup is fully transferred and restored on a target environment, we can keep on taking the incremental backups that can be applied on top of this backup, which is not yet opened fully for the business use, and we can keep on applying the logs. All this, it can be very complicated, but it is achieved through tried and tested templates and procedures and automations that are built by Protera. So this becomes very transparent for you, and we offer multiple rounds of tests before we actually take the production environment for migrations. Before I move on further, are there any questions? Good. All right,
I
so
don't
moving
see
into
it yet, but I'm going to encourage everyone to please ask me some questions. We're going to be done with the formal session in about 15 minutes. So anyone from Martin at Little Caesars to Gio Peng, from, hopefully I pronounced that right, from the city of Houston, or Russ there from Bedrock, I'd welcome any of your questions that I will make sure get answered directly.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Right. So as Stelios was explaining before, Stelios, why don't you take us through a little bit of further detail on the storage gateway as a concept and how the feature works?
Yes, for the economy of time, as I said, I'm just touching up along for a few things. As the team explained, we have a database on your premise, on your data center, and somehow we need to move them over to the cloud. Okay, so there are some technologies. One of them that you see here is the file gateway. File gateway is just an instance that you install in your data center, and it acts as a file server. Then you start moving things there, and the function of the file gateway is to mirror whatever data they have in store to an Amazon S3 bucket. As you see, the critical part is how to move the data to the cloud and how to have access to them. So S3 seems to be, the best way, the cheapest way to hold a lot of data, and we use it extensively in order to move backups and other files that we need in order to reconstruct the servers from your data center to the virtual machines that are running on the cloud. So there's some inherent safeties in terms of security. The protocol of choice, as most of the applications these days, is around secure sockets. HTTPS is the protocol to transfer the data. If there are any concerns about in terms of security, we can also encapsulate this kind of traffic via private channels or via private links. So there are solutions about how to securely move the data from point A to point B.
Perfect. Thank you, Stelios.
Yeah.
So the other means of transferring the data is data sync, right? So pretty much similar concept, but yeah, why don't you take us through the details here?
Yeah, actually, more or less the same situation, different protocol. In this case, you have rsync and secure copies, which is a different approach about transferring lots of data. They have their own mechanisms about the integrity of the data, and you just move them over to, in this case, to a mirror or helper, sometimes we call it, instance that is living on the cloud, and it is acting further on as an NFS, as a file server that provides this data for restoration or other management.
Perfect. Now, one of the biggest use case for transferring very large data set, typically in petabytes, but most commonly in terabytes, is AWS Snow Family. Why don't you get us into the details, Stelios?
Yep. The Snow Family, it is the Snow Cone, which is a small device. I think about it as an external disk of sorts. It's a small size rugged device. Snowball is more or less like one of these, reinforced computers, desktop, not a desktop, but floor top, I would say, devices, just to give you the size, the scale. And also they have the Snow Track, I believe they call it, for petabytes worth of data that they just park in your parking lot. Basically, this is a service that you assign, you subscribe to. You request a device, they send you the device, you connect it to your data center. You use it as a local storage. And then when you upload all the data that you have, that you need, you ship it over. Usually the turnaround is around a week from start to finish, from ordering up to seeing your data up on the S3 buckets on the cloud. And this is in order to move the bulk of the data, as we said. Usually in order to parallelize, in quotes, the whole scheme, we do it in parallel with log shipping. That we start sending immediately after we take the full backup that we store on that device, and while we're waiting for it to appear on the other side.
Thank you for mentioning that, Stelios. So, like Stelios mentioned, again, this is all managed by us. It's just a feature that we wanted to introduce here, but everything is managed by the migration services provider and typically Protera, right? So it really is a very successfully used and very powerful tool and service in most common scenarios. Anything that is larger than 10 terabyte, unless we have very large pipe between MPLS and AWS with your direct connect connections, it is difficult to transfer the data in a short time window. So with our experience, we plan it in a way that, let's say we start with your full online DB backup, which does not require any outage window. We plan it in a way that we can keep on staging the logs that we have to store here. So once the Snow device reaches to AWS, and once we can restore the database to a point where we can apply logs on top of it, everything is scheduled that way, and we can manage the minimized business downtime, even though the data sizes may be in petabytes. Right, so this is the feature that we have been using very successfully with our automation tools. Going further,
sorry. One last comment on that is that many of our customers they have a fear about how the data will be transferred, and they feel that this is going to be the most the point that things fail. We don't bend the laws of physics. We just do it in a way that is secure. We guarantee the integrity of the data, and fortunately enough, the cloud is providing us with all the tools that are needed in order to do it in an efficient way.
Exactly. Now, with all the backup and restore technologies that we have discussed so far, obviously there are very specific cloud-specific continuous data protection techniques that are very popular. Right, because this minimizes the efforts on database administrators, the operating system administrators, and everybody else, with providing a revolutionary tool set that literally clones the existing virtual machines and pretty much all possible types of platforms and maps it to associated AWS EC2 images. So here is the concept introduced, but as we go through this concept in detail, we can see that one of the most common used platform, Cloud Endure, and some of the tool sets around that is used. A very classic case in SAP world for using this kind of migration tool is really the application servers. As you can imagine, the database servers would require a more granular log management, and then the and the point of time failures and the consistency around database. Sometimes the customers may not be comfortable with cloning technologies associated around that. AWS and SAP certifies Cloud Endure for most of the databases, but the most commonly used scenario with Protera tool set is really Cloud Endure being used for SAP application servers. So as you can as you can see here, very simple and protected, a solid infrastructure. Stelios, why don't you take us to the details?
Yeah, I don't want to go too deep into it, but one thing that you cannot do with the Cloud Endure is bend the laws of physics again. This is my favorite slogan here. You have this works only over network, over the internet. So if you have lots of data, it's going to take forever in the terms to replicate. What this tool does, actually, Cloud Endure, for the history of it, it was an independent company, and it was purchased acquired by AWS because of this unique technology that they were employing. Basically, what they do is and I underline that, on supported operating systems, meaning certain versions and above, they have agent which you install on your premise systems. And what they do is they do block replication. They copy any block that is changing whenever it changes, and asynchronously trying to synchronize it with a equivalent disk, if you like, in quotes, on the cloud. So, and when they take the bulk of data and sort of mirror the disks over, then they continuously send the deltas of the blocks that are changing over and have checkpoints that you can recover from. So on the flip side, if you want to instantiate an instance on the cloud, You just check one of these checkpoints, and you say, I want you to realize a system for me that has a timestamp of such and such. And then from then on, when it's getting launched, it is exactly the same system as you had on premise at that point in time. Okay, so we use that also, as the team said, to replicate mostly application servers that are slow moving data, or rarely moving data, and the smaller machines in terms of storage, because the storage and the size of it is the key factor here on use or not use technology. And on the side also, they use this technology as a DR solution. AWS offers that also as a DR solution. Yep.
Exactly. Thank you, Stelio. So with about 20 minutes remaining in the section here, just the last slide on the homogeneous migration concept. As you can see here, if you're not changing any specific platform or one of the three layers, these are the most common scenarios we have seen, and all those scenarios are supported by the platform for homogeneous system migrations. Any of this operating system flavor, any of this source infrastructure, we can migrate it from, and any of these databases, it is supported. One of the most common other scenario that HANA customers are using is HANA system replication, right? So for migrating the HANA systems from on-prem data center with the physical hardware to cloud, which is actually one of the most common scenario that we have seen in last few months, HSR is the technology that we use. At a high level, HSR really is a standard SAP replication service that the HANA software provides, but with the use of additional best practices that Protera has built in with the help of AWS, we are able to provide automation framework on top of the HSR, which basically makes it very transparent for customer, and then very much, it makes it very easy to manage the downtimes. It makes it visible to you in terms of how much percentages your systems are moved. Make it very transparent with a simple dashboard that you can see. We're going to introduce those dashboards in next few slides. But at a high level, with all the combinations of best practices that are provided by AWS and SAP, we have kind of mastered this in minimizing the downtime and making assured successful transition of your HANA systems. And this can be applied to any scenario. You may have S4HANA, you may have BW4HANA, you may have scale out nodes, you may have just the analytics implemented, or you may even have some very unique business cases implemented just as a independent HANA system. It all can be done through this scenario. So as we compared earlier, as we discussed in the detail, backup and restores are typically used for small environments when we have flexible downtimes. The cloud endure is pretty much used for app servers, where we have a possibility to kind of literally migrate the environments without kind of making any change in the underlying platform. And typically for app servers, it allows obviously a very smooth migration, as Stelio has explained, with almost near zero downtime and a point in time that you want to achieve in minutes. Typical scenarios, when we want to migrate just a server as a server, right? All those options are also available that you can avail. For example, with VMware, between VMware and Hyper-V scenarios. HSR is already being discussed. One of the most adopted approach for any HANA system, as it makes it very transparent and kind of best practice for migrating those systems. As you can imagine, the HANA systems are in nature extremely large with their persistent storage, and this approach allows the customers to minimize their business downtime. With everything that is SAP on AWS, there is another option that we typically use for our deployment, which is called AWS Quick Start. Now, this is a built-in platform that AWS has built with their platform engineering team with best-in-class engineers to build SAP environments with the specific automations that they've built on AWS platform. So as a de facto, Protera uses those, and Protera has built in their automation on top of it to kind of orchestrate all these quick starts and making the environments typical of how customer wants it to that customizing specific options that they've selected. With that, finally, we finished the homogeneous migration scenarios, and we move on to a little more complicated scenario, which is heterogeneous. Now, obviously, with a cloud migration, every IT organization and the IT management thinks that let us take the opportunity here and let us optimize our move. Let's try to go with the latest possible operating system. Let's try to go with the latest possible database server. And if possible, let's convert our environment to, let's say, at least on HANA, if we are on any DB, or if we are already on HANA, let's try to see if we can convert it to S/4HANA, right? All those scenarios that I mentioned are possible, and they're possible through different tools. So with simple system copy option, you can migrate your environment from any of the source platform to any of the supported target platform, meaning that you can migrate it from Linux-based DB2 systems to Windows-based SQL Server systems, and vice versa to that extreme. And you can also migrate your environments with a possible upgrade in a single step with a tool called SAP DMO, Database Migration Options. So these are all, again, standard SAP tools. Like I mentioned before, just an introduction to the tool set. All this gets done through a standard templatized, solid and validated practice and automation tools with us, right? With managing those migrations with Protera. But we'll get into the details of all those now. So a simple export and import to start with can be one of the options, which is SAP Standard. As we don't know the target platform sometimes, because some customers typically exports their environment and asks that, hey, I want to explore this with multiple platforms here. What can be my most optimal target solution? You can choose to export your environments for a specific target platform, just like your backup. You can upload those exports and then import it using standard SAP tools. This is a very common business scenario that people use for POCs, or with a very specific optimizations achieved. We use this scenario for a lot of optimizations, for a lot of heterogeneous system copies and migrations where customer has relatively larger business downtime window, which is typically 24 hours. You can obviously optimize this with parallel export and import, and that's where partner like Protera comes in place, where we can actually literally go down to hours for even a terabyte of environment as we continuously run through the optimization here. Now, this is the most interesting tool that SAP has developed in last 3 years. Some DMO may have, some of you may have heard about it, but some DMO provides a lot of various scenarios and a lot of options around heterogeneous system migrations, right? So first of all, it by the name, as you can see, the software update manager, it is used when you actually have SAP software upgrade as one of the scenario as part of your migration. So a very common thing, right? You're running SAP Business Suite on any DB in your on-prem data center or somewhere else. You're ready for the digital transformation. You want to go to the next level. Obviously, what you will think is, I want to have the best well-architected deployment on a public cloud platform with a solid, highly available environment, let's say possibly on a HANA DB, and I want to transition this with a possible upgrade of my SAP software, right? If you're not ready for S/4HANA, you would at least like to go for a latest enhancement pack, latest support pack stacks, latest operating system and database versions, and the most secure platform.
Just very wrapping up on what Jatin was saying here. We have to have certain tools, to copy the data from any database. You have the AWS Database Migration Service, schema conversion tools. This is because of you're going from a different schema to a different target schema. So all these things are, as we said, they're handled by SAP tools, and this is the critical part I need to take away with you, is that all the methods that are used are SAP certified with tools that SAP provides, and this is critical because your system needs to be certified to be supportable by SAP. So there's no black magic happening. It's just the automation and orchestration of tools in order to do it in an efficient way. Let me see if I can. Okay, as I said, we need to. We're doing a lot of automation. We had a long period of development, I would say, incubating a tool. I have a feedback now.
Hey, Ron.
Hello.
Hey, Stelios, Ron, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. You want to take over, Tatin? I was just about trying to introduce Sion.
Yes. Yep. If you allow me to share my screen, Ron.
Is that Jayton?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make you the presenter as well. Okay.
Please let me know when you can see it. I apologize for that.
No problem. Now we can see it. Can everyone else?
Yes, we're good.
Thank you. I didn't realize that my battery was draining. Sorry about that. All right. So thank you, Stelios, for taking over. Yeah, I just wanted to spend a little more on some DMO. Again, a lot of scenarios possible and then a lot of optimizations possible, right? So depends on how experienced your migration engineer is. We really can go to an extent and minimize the downtime there, provide a lot of transparency and provide a lot of auditing capabilities around how data is transitioned to the new platform. As you can imagine, it's a lot of transformation to take, and your business teams, your finance teams, your audit teams might require additional insights around all the transformations with all possible reporting when you do business consolidation, right? So with all our automations that we have built on Arian platform, we can provide you all that. So here we go. We introduce Protera Arion, which is a cloud modernization platform that we have built for migrations and management of SAP and SAP friends, any workload on cloud platform, right? So all the tools, all the automations that I've discussed, I've talked about in my previous slides, is really around the automation framework and templatized best practices that we have built, right? And that makes your transformations much more successful, provides you all the insights around all the preparations that you may need to do, not just from the technical migrations or technical preparations perspective as an IT team, but also for your business around providing all the visibilities in terms of optimizing the project plans, making sure that you have risks identified and covered, as we have predefined risks for this kind of migrations, and we come up with some standard practices that basically allows you to minimize all possible risks that we have seen over the years. So with that, we are really towards the end of our deck here, and then we would like to encourage you to schedule an assessment with Protera around any possible migration scenarios that you may have in your mind. We can provide you free assessment, and with that we can get a way too much in detail around all possible complications that you think is something that we can't handle or something that you may see as a challenge. We can discuss options around it, and we can assure you that all possible scenarios that you think are challenging can be achieved very smoothly, right? And with this assessment, you should also be able to get a lot of insights around various options in terms of your cloud migration expenses, your run rate on cloud, best possible well architected scenarios, various SLAs around various type of deployments. So all those details can come in very handy when you are either in the process of already getting business approvals, or if you are ready to prepare your business case for the transformation.